this session, we'll explore public-private partnerships, briefly called PPP. Now, let us first see why PPP was needed. Prior to 1996, the state of the Indian roads and other infrastructure was quite poor. The need for PPP was felt because the government had limited funds. In 1995, the Ministry of Transport, they amended the National Highways Act 1956. 2008 and 2009, there was a severe economic downturn. In the past, SPVs have also been misused to suppress information. The example was Enron. There was a huge scandal. Now let us come to the different kinds of PPP model which we have. Hi, welcome back to the Brenman's Construction Management series. In this session, we'll explore the various models that are being used in the country for public-private partnerships, which is briefly called PPP. Now, let us first see why PPP was needed in the country. Prior to 1996, the state of the Indian roads and other infrastructure was quite poor. In the sense, even national highways were simply a two-lane road, nothing better than that. Maintenance was very poor, and people were generally thinking that there is no need to pay for a better quality of road. So it was only in 1996 to 1999 that a major push was given to the road sector by the Ministry of Transport, MORTH, and National Highways Authority of India. The need for PPP was felt because the government had limited funds, and a serious need was felt to rope in the private sector who could get associated with the infrastructure development by putting in their own finance and developing the roads. So that's how PPP was started in 1996. So between 1996, in 1995, what happened was, the Ministry of Transport, they amended the National Highways Act 1956. So this enabled the government to rope in the private sector. So between 1996 and 1999, many projects were given on PPP model. In fact, one of the largest infrastructure push was given on PPP basis during this period. But what happened was, the initial models which were given, rather specified, were the BOT models, build, operate and transfer. Either it's a toll based or annuity based. So it was on these two models. So with the result that even though NHAI had floated about 322 projects, only 22 bids were given on BOT toll basis and some 27 on BOT annuity basis. Now in BOT toll, the concessioner, as he is called, the concessioner puts in own money, designs, constructs and transfers the project to the authority. Now he collects the toll from the road user at specified rates of NHAI, which are also increased regularly based on the WPI movement of the WPI indices. However, the problems with these two models were handing over of land, one of the biggest problems which was faced, and the uncertainty in tolling, the revenue forecasting and revenue collection. Quite often it happened that the initial projections itself were fudged, rather adjusted or increased to make the projects workable. So when the concessionaire moved in and completed his roads, he found that during the concession period, the revenue from the toll collection was much lower than what was specified or anticipated. So because of this, many companies got bankrupt, and there was a general tendency to shoo away, to keep away from these two models. Many times, the government did not obtain permissions, statutory clearances like environmental clearance and all. There are instances where projects have been shelved because the government has not been able to obtain the environmental clearance. I remember one project in Karnataka, Goa-Karnataka border, and that project could not take off because there was no environmental clearance, and plus huge land acquisition problems. So that was the story. So in 2008 and 2009, there was a severe economic downturn, and then with all these projects which I just referred, it's a combination of this. Many projects were in disarray. They had to be discontinued, and the contractors simply abandoned them. So 2008, there was some Chaturvedi committee was commissioned, and they made some recommendation. They drafted the model concession agreements and made some corrections in order to make the projects more interesting to the private sector. But still, despite this, because of this inherent uncertainties in this model, still they did not get a proper response, the desired response. So in 2012, there was a pilot project which was taken up in the state of Karnataka State Highway Improvement 2, it was called. It was funded by the World Bank. So this project was undertaken on a hybrid annuity model, which essentially means that the government, it puts in money during the construction phase to the tune of 40%. The concessionaire or the contractor, he puts in 60%, and then the government pays annuity after the construction period and during operation period. So this was a better model in which financial risks were shared by the government as well, and then some fundamental changes, improvements were made, in the sense that at the time of award of the project, at least 80% of the land must be in the possession and must be handed over to the contractor. So this was a very significant improvement, and which had the desired impact. There were many successful projects which were undertaken not only in the road sector but also in public health. In 2018, there was one sewage treatment plant which was constructed in Varanasi as a part of this Namami Gange, the cleaning up of Ganges waters. There are water treatment plants and power generation which were also undertaken on this hybrid annuity model. So, and over the years, this hybrid annuity model has been quite successful. More than maybe 24 projects are currently in progress, and it has mobilized medium-sized firms also, apart from the big players. Now let us come to the different kinds of PPP models which we have. The first is the build, operate and transfer, in which the private entity will raise finance, he'll carry out designs, construct, operates and maintains the facility for a specified period, maybe ranging from 15 years to 30 years. Now during this period, the concessionaire will collect the toll so that he gets reimbursed by the government for the construction costs that he has incurred already. But The uncertainty regarding the traffic forecasting and revenue from toll, it remains. So what are the pros? The private entity bears the construction and operational risks, while the public sector benefits from the infrastructure without any upfront investment. So this is for the government. Now efficiency, private companies often bring expertise and efficiency to the project, potentially leading better quality and faster construction. And financial incentives. Governments often provide financial incentives in terms of tax breaks and subsidies, and encourages private investment for infrastructure projects. Now the disadvantages, regulatory compliance. The concessionaire has to comply with all sort of regulatory compliances, which are very tedious and time consuming and complex. The second thing is depreciation. So since the concession period is long, the concessionaire is left with a project with a significant amount of depreciation, wear and tear in the long concession period. And finally, the uncertainty of revenue collection from the toll. So the next variation is design, build, operate and transfer, that is DBOT. So features are, design, build, operate and transfer. So I think the terminology itself is very clear. Here all the major risks, primary risks, are on the private sector. And in addition to the design and construction and operation and maintenance, the private contractor is required to take the associated risk with revenue forecast, revenue leakage and project financing. Then there is an annuity based for this annuity contract, DBOT, but annuity. So in this case, what changes is that the government pays annuity to the concessionaire. So the financial risk is taken out. The concessionaire is relieved of the financial risk, so revenue forecast and all. So under this model, annuity payment was fixed throughout the entire operations period, which exposed the concessionaires to the risk of long-term inflation. So it resulted into getting uncompetitive bids, or the profit margins or the concessionaires were eroded. Now one thing that is common to all these PPP formats of projects is that you need to have a special purpose vehicle, which is in short called SPV. So in this, the parent company creates a SPV for executing the project. The sole intention is to execute the project, and by doing so, since SPV is a legal entity created by the parent company, it isolates the financial risk and manages specific assets or projects often used in structured finance and investments. Now SPVs are often created as limited liability companies or joint ventures. They have their own balance sheets, assets and liabilities, which means that their activities do not impact the parent's company's financial statements. This structure allows SPVs to function independently, and this can be beneficial for the tax purposes. It works the other way around. Like it does not impact the parent company's working, the reverse is also true. Suppose the parent company is not doing well, then the SPV can still sustain, since it is independent of the parent company as far as books of account are concerned. Now advantages of SPV, risk mitigation. SPVs can help isolate financial risk, protecting the parent company from potential liabilities. As SPV is a separate legal entity, the parent company goes bankrupt, SPV can still carry on. Flexibility in operations. SPVs can be tailored for specific project investments, providing operational flexibility. Enhanced financing options. SPVs can issue bonds or securities to raise finance at favorable rates, and tax savings if it is created in a tax haven like Cayman Island. Now, disadvantage of SPVs, it's a very complex thing. The complexity, creation and management of SPV can be complex and require significant legal and financial oversight and potential for misuse. The optics surrounding the SPVs is generally not good, and it is negative quite often. In the past, SPVs have also been misused to suppress information. The example was Enron, who were supposed to, an American company, which was supposed to establish a power plant at Guhagar in Maharashtra. So there was a huge scandal, and which was subjected to regulatory scrutiny. So now we'll come to the next type of contract, which is a lump sum contract. So what is a lump sum contract? A lump sum contract is a type of construction agreement where the contractor agrees to complete a project for a fixed price. The price is established before the work begins and includes all costs, labor, materials, overheads, profit, etc. Now, how does it work? A prerequisite to have a contract on lump sum basis is that the scope of the work must be frozen. The owner or the project proponent must exactly know the scope of work so that the contractor can price his bid accordingly. Along with the scope of work, the designs and the execution drawings and the specifications, they have to be also available to the contractor, which will help in arriving at a correct price. Then the contractor estimates the total cost of the project and submits a lump sum bid covering all aspects of the project. Once the bid is accepted, a legally bind contract is signed. Now, payment structure. Now, payments are made generally in installments which are tied to some milestones or upon completion of certain construction stages or as a percentage basis. This structure ensures regular cash flow to the contractor, ensuring that the contractor meets his specific benchmarks. Now, change orders. Now, if the client wants some change orders or changes in the scope, original scope of work, then he has to issue an instruction in writing, and the contract price will get adjusted upwards after the price of the change of scope is agreed upon. Now, what are the advantages? There is a cost certainty to the owner who knows exactly how much money he is going to spend, thereby reducing the need to mobilize emergency funds. Simplicity. These contracts are comparatively very simple to operate as compared to the other types of contract. Now, disadvantage. There is a financial risk which is assumed by the contractor, meaning that he must cover for any additional costs that may arise during the execution of the project, while the owner benefits from predictable budgeting. And inflexibility. This is the disadvantage. Once the scope of work is frozen, it becomes very difficult to address changes in the scope of work in case there is a dispute. I would like to give an example of the Mumbai Coastal Road Project, the south side, which was sort of a lump sum contract, but it was on a design and build basis. So the only difference is the contractor did the design and build. He carried out the design and then built the road. So that is the only difference between lump sum contract and a design and build contract. Now we'll come to the design and build contract. So the features are: the contractor assumes the design responsibility and the risk. This results into reduction of delivery schedule by overlapping the design phase and construction phase. Designs and construction can be taken up in parallel. So these contracts save time and can prevent situations where the owner might be caught in the middle of a dispute between the contractor and a designer, if the designer happens to be a separate entity. Now, this is having a collaborative problem solving by the contractor and designer who interact with themselves and can address the problems in advance. Now, customization of design to suit the site conditions and also the resources that are already there with a contractor. Say for example, the contractor is having formwork for a particular type of structure. I mean, he can tell the designer to incorporate those dimensions into his design. And it has got fewer change orders. Because the architect and the contractor work together, there are fewer change orders that will occur throughout the project. Now, in lump sum contract, there have been instances, I think MSRDC carried out the works of flyovers in Mumbai on a lump sum basis. But since the ground conditions are unknown and variations do happen in foundations, they had a unit rate for increase or decrease in the founding levels. So, although it was a lump sum contract, these variations could still be catered for. Now, let's come to another type of contract which is widely used by the World Bank, African Development Bank and other multilateral agencies. Now, World Bank has found it increasingly difficult under traditional contracts to ensure that the design is adequate, that the quality of construction is adequate, that the road is completed at the price given by the winning contractor, and that the road is maintained properly after the construction work are completed. Now, this OPRC type of contract, which is output and performance based contracts, they address the above constraints. Now, what are the features of an OPRC contract? So, there are 4 major types of activities in OPRC. One is the rehabilitation works, management and maintenance activities, improvement of works in case there are any additional works to be carried out for improving the efficiency of the project, and there could be some emergency works. So, specifications are required to be included in the contract, defining the level of service that is expected in each type of road. So, how is the level of service defined or stipulated in the contract? So, service level parameters, let's say if it is a paved road, potholes and patching, then cracking of the pavement, cleanliness of the surface, rutting, stroke leveling, loose pavement edges, height pavement or shoulder projections, and shoulder conditions. Now, the specifications are provided in the contract specifying the limiting values for this. If limiting values are exceeded, the contractor must take corrective action, and apart from this, even the time duration, his response time is also stipulated in the contract. Like, let's say if it's a metal beam crash barrier, if it gets damaged, then the contractor must replace that within such and such period. So, all these stipulations are there in the contract, and then it ensures maintenance of service levels over a longer period. One requirement for the successful implementation of OPRC contracts is that the contract must remain attractive throughout the contract period and not only during the initial period, because the contractor is expected to maintain the facility for many years, maybe 8 to 10 years after the completion of the project. So it must be ensured that the contractor is paid enough money to cover all his expenses, including his overheads and profit. So the contractor gets a fixed monthly amount, provided all these service level parameters which are defined, they are adhered to. Here in this particular type of contract, the contractor is free to decide, one, what to do, when to do, how to do, and where to do. These type of contracts, I happen to work in Africa, in Liberia, and the company with whom I was working, they had another contract which was on OPRC. So this is a very popular contract even with the African Development Bank. And the advantage is that you need a very limited supervision team to supervise these contracts. So as a result, the client saves on supervision costs and ensures that the road is kept, maintained to the desired level of service that is stipulated.